COVID-19 safety measures were strictly adhered to at all times during this production.
Welcome to our new podcast, The Uncle. I'm Yan Ling.
And I'm Sean.
And usually in our usual freelance creative exchange podcast, we talk to professionals about how to supercharge their freelance careers. But after speaking to so many people, we were thinking, how did they get so cool? I mean, in order to achieve their successes and fame, they must have been pretty uncool at a certain point.
No matter what kind of successes they have, we get our guests to dish out all the awkward moments that led them to where they are now. Some are even putting the cool in uncool jobs.
So let's go talk to the uncles.
So, Gui is, this is his book, The Little Tongku, and he's going to give us a little...
I or you? You lah.
He's going to teach me how to read this in Singlish, in the proper Singlish accent way. And then I'll try this. Okay, so this is hello, said the fox. Hello, the little Tongku politely turning around to see Bolang. Over here lah, said the voice under the apple tree. You are who? Asked the little Tongku. You see very handsome leh. I is a fox, said the fox. Lai, play with me, said the little Tongku. I very the set. Cannot lah, said the fox. I not tame one. Or paiseh, said the little Tongku. After thinking a bit, he added, tame means what ah? You not from here one is it, said the fox. You looking for what ah? Looking for people lor, said the little Tongku. So tame means what? People, said the fox. They got guns and they hunt one. See brave, tahan them. They also keep chickens. The only thing of interest. You looking for chickens ah? No lah, said the little Tongku. I'm looking for the kawan. So tame means what? Something forgotten these days lor, said the fox. It means to make ties. Okay. How was that?
Not bad.
As Singlish as you can make the Little Prince.
But a bit amo lah, you, but your accent.
Sean, you still too amo eh.
Right, the accent is a bit still. Yeah, you must do the.
You're too proper.
How you do
Okay lah. Okay, this is how I'll do yeah. I mean, other people can do other ways.
This is the master.
No. It's just how I hear the voice in my head.
Oh, okay.
Then got a fox lie. Hello, said the fox. Hello, the little Tongku politely turning around to see Bolang. Over here lah, said the voice under the apple tree. You are who ah? Said the little Tongku. You see very handsome leh. I is a fox, said the fox. Lie. Play with me, said the little Tongku. I very sad. Cannot lah, said the fox. I not tame one. Oh, paiseh, said the little Tongku. After thinking a bit, he added, tame means what ah? You not from here one is it? Said the fox. You looking for what ah? Looking for people lor, said the little Tongku. So tame means what? People ah, said the fox. They got guns, they hunt one. See we buay tahan them. They also keep chicken. The only thing of interest. You looking for chicken ah? No lah, said the little Tongku. I looking for kawan. So tame means what? Something forgotten these days liao, said the fox. It means to make ties. This is how I do it.
It's so interesting how Singlish comes along with your intonation.
Yeah.
Right? It changes it a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even if a Singaporean speak proper English, with the he can speak English one. He or she can speak English one.
That's true.
It's very interesting also. We have all different styles. My Singlish very angmo. He says, so what's Yan Ling's Singlish?
My Singlish comes in everyday. In everyday life.
Yeah, you can do the two. You can do the.
I speak more in my sounds than with actual words. Yeah.
Now, so I don't know whether I should feel offended. Say I'm Is it supposed to be? Wait, why is it supposed to be?
You're not Singlish enough.
No, it's English. It's just that he's more pie, right?
More pie Singlish.
But it's true. I mean, there's a whole range of it. If you go to Chinese-speaking people and the way they speak English, it's also quite different. The intonation is more staccato.
Can you imagine? There's different dialects of Singlish.
Depends lah.
My-
You can code switch within Singlish as well.
Yeah,
You know?
that's true.
You know, when I speak to my more Chinese friends, my Singlish also change.
That's true.
Mm.
I speak slightly different with my Malay friends as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you had a PhD from Newtonism in the 18th century poetry. And then you wrote a web series about Singlish. That's a huge leap in subject matter. So how did it happen?
There's no connection. The 18th century literature bit deals with one part of myself that has been curious about the relationship between science and literature since I started studying literature, because I came from a science background, and from JC onwards I decided I will actually do literature. I didn't do very well. In fact, in secondary school in ACS I flunked lit. Really, I have the report card to show I flunked lit. But it was interesting, and I took it as a challenge to actually try to understand what is going on. And then when I did literature in the university, I got more and more interested, and I realized that 18th century was the period when things really make the change, when there was this split between science and literature. And I got curious about that. I have a lot of questions, and I thought the PhD would help me answer those questions. I think we are allowed to have different interests, right? And the Singlish bit really came out of the blue. It's just something that has been part of my life for a long time. As a kid growing up, learning in school, speaking it with friends, going to army, and then talking to people in this colloquial speech that we try to hide from others, that we don't want to hear us saying certain things about, and that has always been one layer of my life, and just didn't expect it to become an issue when I was asked to write about Singlish for the New York Times. And so very strangely enough, the controversy at the time with that article kind of threw me into a limelight that I didn't really kind of expect to be in.
So you didn't ask for it. It was just like, why is this a big matter?
What was the whole controversy about then?
Okay, so it's a long story, Sean. Because there's also a backstory. I'm just a regular Singlish speaker like everybody in Singapore lah. I mean, I
It's
think
just pretty
people,
normal, eh?
Yeah. But there are people who are in denial of it. No, really, there are people who are in denial of it. They think that they're not speaking Singlish. When I listen to them telling me they're not speaking Singlish, it is in Singlish.
Oh, come
But
on.
that's really worrying. That's really worrying when they don't even know that they're speaking Singlish and they thought they've been using English all along. And that's the advantage I get, I guess, as a language person, and who has studied into it. You kind of realize, hey, and also having lived overseas, you kind of realize what is actually only the way we speak English and nobody else in the world.
What's the rest of the world speaking?
No,
about?
I guess people assume that Singlish is like, you just la and you lay.
Yeah, that's
no,
right.
but there's a lot more to that.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot more to that. The way we phrase things, that nobody else phrases. And then we, for example, like to use the word come, right? I mean,
like come.
Yeah,
like,
no, come, not that come. That kind of festival come dinner.
Oh.
And your local district or your
Yeah.
area would have this kind of things, right?
Yeah.
It's in so many posters. They've said
Yeah, exactly.
MP
With your MP
coming.
faces and all that. Yeah, and this is used wrong. I mean, I would say used wrongly, but it's used in a way that's antiquated. People don't use that word in that way in most English-speaking countries anymore. But we still inherit that use from the past, and we use it in a way that's also wrong. I mean, the proper way to use it is to use it with hyphens, but we don't. And so therefore it comes out very awkward. I think if you ask any CNN Amo who see that word on the banner, they can't but do a second look. As if like,
Yeah, no,
you guys doing here? I thought this is a decent country.
and I get very amused also when people say, you go and eat yourself lah.
Eat yourself, exactly, eat yourself. Right? I mean,
How do you eat yourself?
or you go and die.
It's just the funniest. It's just the littlest things that you use every day, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
unconsciously.
So why then are people so? Why do people then think so uncool? Why are they so offended by it?
I think it's two things lah, right? Firstly, is the propaganda level, where we have always been taught that Singlish is bad for English mastery. I mean that if you learn more, speak more Singlish, it will affect your English, and then it will affect our economy, and then we'll all go back to becoming a fishing village again. There's the narrative that's been drunk to us when we were young. So in that sense, people felt like they need to defend this, even though there's very little logical linguistic underpinning to this logic, right? And then the other thing is that people kind of feel they don't understand that their own English competence have not been improved. I mean, we don't actually actively strive to in school at least to, I guess, inculcate enough of the attention to proper grammar and all that. And I think that's the teachers themselves. I'm not sure. I mean, I assume we have very good teachers, but I think if people are not speaking English well after they come out from the school system, don't look to Singlish. There's something about the pedagogy that we might want to look into, right? You don't speak better English by speaking less English. That's not how it works. It's like if I speak less French, it doesn't make me more English. That's not. Yeah. You have to learn English properly, right? So I mean, again, there's that thing, but there's basically the distraction that we kind of not see that the real problem lies in elsewhere, and Singlish is actually do its own thing, So yeah, so that was it lah. But coming back to the point about the back story to the New York Times issue was that it began, if I remember, from 2015. Why do I remember this? Was because I was supposed to give a talk on the day Lee Kuan Yew passed away at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. Right? On Singlish.
Okay.
Right? And in the morning, I got this contact and said, I contacted them and said that, hey,
it's not a good idea.
Lee Kuan Yew has passed away. I don't think it's a good idea to have this today. And they called back to me and said, yeah, I think so. So let's not have it today. So I remember that distinctly because we then held it 1 month later, right? And the reason for that was that originally they wanted me to talk about my poetry. The Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy wanted me to talk about me as a poet, what my poetry is about, introduced it to their students, mostly foreigners, and so that at least they get a sense of Singaporean poetry, right? So that was the original plan. But as we got closer to the date, they kind of realized, hey, these people may not even be exposed to Singaporean poetry, so it kind of like putting the cart before the horse. So they said, okay, why not you just focus on one aspect of your poetry that they may be interested in. They said, why not we then talk about one aspect of your poetry, which is Singlish. Say, hey, Singlish is something they must have encountered after a year in Singapore. And so why not we come at that? And I said, yeah, that's a good idea. So I gave that talk on Singlish. That was what that was about, And during that time, during the first time when they did it, they didn't realize how popular the talk is. Now these talks, whenever I do it for Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, it's basically closed doors. But at the time, the first one was open to the public to come, and a lot of people actually came, and it was a surprise interest in the topic. And then someone took a snapshot of my slides, and then it's been circulating without acknowledgement on now Twitter and all the kind, or Instagram and all that kind of things, right? Cannot now. I want my IP rights, but it's been it's circulating, and it has that kind of popularity until today. I still see that popping out, and then people sending to me and I have to tell them, hey, this is my slide. Why are they
say, hey, you might be interested in this.
Yeah,
exactly. I wrote this.
You can't believe how many times I keep getting this, right? People say, hey,
you got $1 every time you got it.
Yeah. Hey, Gui, there's this Singlish translation of the Little Prince. Yeah, I'm the translator. Anyway, that's the roundabout thing that happened lah. So when that talk became quite popular, and Mr. Brown shared the original screenshot, which was taken from somebody else, it went really viral, and because of that, they got me to do the web series. New York Times contacted me and said that, hey, why don't you write something on Singlish? Yeah, and it just really the whole Singlish adventure is made of accidents, one after another. I just take the lead each time, with
and I just love how it sort of came into sort of the attention of certain people only when it's on an international level.
Yeah.
You know, the local news was like,
Yeah.
you know, you can deal with it. And then once it's in the international news, then it becomes an issue. I think Singlish has always been, we don't want other people to hear us speaking Singlish,
Yeah.
but, you know, of course, every day we speak it every day. Everybody understands
Yeah.
each other, and
And-
it doesn't matter.
You're right. I think the unfortunate thing also is that I've noticed even in Singapore, the foreigners or the new citizens are the people who are really interested in Singlish, as opposed to the Singaporeans themselves. You know, we kind of felt like, oh, we speak it, we know the grammar, we don't have to know anything. That is fine. You know, if you're on
Yeah.
that note, I'm fine with it. But if you're on that level that says, no, hey, we have to suppress it. You know, we cannot speak Singlish. We must speak good English, and you tell it to me in Singlish, I get very offended. You know, as in
It's
you know,
it's
which level of
Incongruous.
subconscious speaking are you at? You know, I don't get it.
So what happened was that I think like you got a statement released about from the
Yes,
Prime
it's
Minister's
the-
office,
yes, it's
secretary
from
or
the
something.
Press secretary of the Prime Minister.
So what was the statement about? And what,
I really can't remember now, but it's still on the web. You can still see it.
But-
It's not really a statement. It's a reply to my article on Singlish in the New York Times.
did it work well for you? I mean, they always say no, bad publicity, no
It's-
such thing, right?
Yeah, no such thing as
Yes,
bad
I mean-
publicity.
Yeah, no, but it was bad because for a month after, I mean, when the article came out, of course, I have a number of people with different takes on it, lah. People who either say that, hey, you know, why are you celebrating Singlish, and other people say, hey, this is great, you know, this is something that I can identify with. I mean, and you have a whole range in the middle. But then when the government came in, suddenly some people felt like they need to show their allegiance to the authority.
Oh, okay.
You know? And so whatever they may think about Singlish, when they originally may not even have any opinion about Singlish, suddenly they have an opinion. You know, and it was quite bad because I needed to hide for 1 month, or rather I just had to keep silent for 1 month, stop myself from saying anything, because there were just all these voices on the internet, and they allow all these opinion voices to come out, and then you have all these funny sudden experts in Singlish or some sudden experts in linguists, even if they have no training in linguistics at all, coming out to say that Singlish is bad for culture in Singapore. Singlish is bad for the future of Singapore. Then people coming out and say all these sorts of things, and then you can't believe I got a lot of hate mails, that was sent to me.
Hate
People-
mail?
Yeah. People.
no.
Yeah. Yes, I got
Like
hate
people
mail. I got
bother
hate
to
mail.
write
People who
hate
come in
mail.
and say that how dare you undermine my kids' ability to grasp good English. How dare you sabotage Singapore's future? I get that kind of things.
But that's not
but
your
you have
point,
a PhD in language, so that gives you more right than them to comment
but at
about
the same
No, that's the
time-
point. But that is also the government's point, no? As in, like, I can do it because I am so smart. I have a PhD. But then look at the ordinary people. The ordinary people are not educated. I mean, I feel there's quite a bit of unfortunate looking down on the capabilities of ordinary folk. To say that the ordinary folk cannot do code switching. The ordinary folk can only
not
speak
true.
one language. They cannot speak two languages.
right.
Then what's the point of bilingualism? The whole point of bilingualism is you are able to speak two languages.
Yeah.
And as long as you can speak two languages, you can do code switching. Right?
Yeah,
So
that's true.
by extension, then you can code switch Singlish and no proper
Yeah, but
English.
we have been taught to say that we cannot. We are taught to say that the ordinary capability is not code switching. We can only speak one good language.
I understand.
But then you're totally undermining the whole official position that we ought to be bilingual, right? And the whole basis of bilingualism is that you are able to move between two languages with certain skill, with certain speed, right? And that is how Singlish came about. Singlish itself is dependent on code switching. If
That's
you
true.
don't code switch, you will have no Singlish, right? And so
Yeah.
Singlish
That is true.
is the premise on it.
Yeah, because I remember, just stories from my parents or the older generation, that how it came about was because they were illiterate. They literally
Yes.
didn't know. They didn't go to school. They didn't study. But they had to communicate, right? They go to
Yes.
the market, they had to sell their wares, they had to buy stuff, and everyone spoke a different language.
Yes.
But everyone understood each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not just about literacy, it's also
Yeah.
about being able to be friends. with to be neighborly,
That's
right?
true.
You have to give a little and take a little. You cannot assert your own language. You have to assume the right of other communities and their languages. And we just, it's just cham cham, it just mix, chapalang, it just, come on, something like. And this is what Singlish is about. It's not just bits and pieces of information. It's the way we formulate friendliness to one another in Singapore. This is the whole. It's a very strong value in Singapore. If you want to talk about kampong spirit, Singlish has to be a strand.
What I don't understand is why is this even a debate when you look to other English-speaking countries,
Yeah.
and they are not speaking proper English anyway.
Yeah, correct. I think we don't have that depth of understanding of how language works. Yes, there is a proper standard language, but when we speak normally, we adjust it according to our listeners. We don't speak high English to a person who is our friend or our family member. We adjust it to a level where it's about our familiarity, right? It's about our ownership of the language, so we can play with it. If something is owned by us, we can play with it. I guess it's about Singapore evolving. I can understand at the time when English was for a large number of people in Singapore a kind of a foreign or new language, right? I guess at one time when we all picked it up in school as a first language, but maybe our grandparents didn't have that. Our parents maybe, but our grandparents definitely didn't have that, right? So in that sense, it's not yet, in a sense, rooted in the culture. But by this time, we have about 50 years of having, this thing in place. And in that sense, most Singaporeans, I think, would think in English. And we have to accept that language has now this level where it is owned. We can't say that it is just a foreigner's language, right? And when you own a language, we have the right to play with it, right? I think that's also a reason why poetry is such a big thing in Singapore compared to other Western countries. If you notice, most countries, poetry is actually the minor genre, the minor medium compared to novels. I think Singapore is one of the few countries in the world where poetry is their major literary medium.
That's true. Yeah.
So on that note, then is your kind of poetry then? As one of a very prolific poets in this country.
No, my poetry is different. In a way. Yes, I did started off playing with Singlish in poetry, and that was in the book Who Wants to Buy a Book of Poems, right? And from that title alone, it's quite
Singlish.
Yeah. So when it came out, at the time in the 90s, people don't really care about poetry. And in fact, they were talking about the kind of death of poetry. I remember it was reported in newspaper. So it was part of the inspiration for the book title and also the idea for the book, which is really, I just want to write poems that are fun, talk about ordinary life. And so I started off with humor poetry. The unfortunate thing about that is that, in Singapore, the first book is always the most important. And my first poetry book kind of defined my image. So people always think that, this Gui is always writing humor poetry. Yes, about like 60% of my poetry are humor, but the rest are not, I do deal with serious themes, from love to death. But anyway, I'm entirely fine if you just think of me as a humor poet, because that then keeps me under the radar.
So it seems like you were the one who sort of started off this movement in a way. Do you see yourself as that way, and what do you think of all this? Nowadays people are talking about it.
Again, as I said, it's a series of coincidences, accidents that's led me to this point, and it's also the help and support. Tintin Fast, the German publisher who decides to test my theory that Singlish is a language by making me translate the books he has rights to. So I started off with Little Prince, and the next one, which is Beatrix Potter, the tale of Little Rabbit, Peter Rabbit.
So in a sense, you are making Singlish cool, right? You're making it cool by bringing it into things like the Little Prince, Beatrix Potter. You publish a dictionary, so you have made it cool in a sense. You made Singlish cool over the recent years.
I think that if you ask me, I think specifically the thing I did was that I think the argument has to move, right? The argument cannot be for decades and decades whether Singlish should be spoken or not. That is an irrelevant question at the end of the day. But yet, at the national level, we keep getting stuck at this. will Singlish destroy my English? Will it's like we can have this conversation for going on forever.
There'll be no
The
conclusion.
only way to cut this golden knot and move on is to say that, hey, can someone prove that Singlish is a language? And once you can prove that, the argument is closed. Once you can differentiate the two, and it's actually good for understanding English. If you know that Singlish is a language, then you know when you're speaking Singlish, the things that go into speaking Singlish, and what speaking English really means. You allow people to realize that, hey, all this time I've not been speaking English. The rules of Singlish and all will take time to develop.
Yeah,
But right now, I think
there's
we
no
have
defined.
to move. We have to move, right? So if someone pick up this book and you read it and say, hey, it's English, what? Then you're in trouble because it's not in English, it's Singlish. I mean,
Okay.
that's what I mean by creating a point where we can finally say that we know what is English and what is Singlish. Once we can firstly acknowledge that Singlish is a language, which is what the translations and all is about, and then we can differentiate between English and Singlish. And once we move on, we can do the thing of acknowledging it as a marker of identity. And politicians will not feel shy.
I was looking at the definitions of how you speak Singlish, and I was like, just speak lah. But I see how important it is, in moving it forward, like what you said. It's just really interesting, but it was so tiring to sort of dissect what we use every day unconsciously.
Other than language, the other component is the history. And again, I feel like I have the training in that. I have looked at how language evolves through time, especially the English language. Right, English language at one time did not look like the English we know now. I mean, in fact, if you look at snippets of English across the different centuries, you'll see how it has changed, right? And at the earliest form in the Old English, it looks nothing like current English. It's actually spelled and looked very much like Latin, French, Celtic, and all those other languages, and just chapalang, mixed together. It looks exactly like what Singlish is now. Right now, I think we're at the starting point of something exciting. I mean, I call it a new language, but it has the potential to become what English is today in 800 years' time.
So you've studied language, clearly, the history of language, and now when you look at the way a conversation is set, right? People go online and then everybody can become a critic. I'm not trying to be disparaging and cast aspersions on people or on online netizens, but how do you feel as a literary critic that you've had spent all this time? I got my PhD and then here you are trying to come here and criticize my work on
it's
Singlish.
fine, because I think a lot of them doesn't know my training. They don't know that I'm a writer as well. So which is fine. I think my problem has always been the different things I do in my life. It's not a problem to me, but it is a problem to people who perceive me. People who know me as a comic artist were very surprised when they learned that I was an academic. People who knew me as a poet are surprised that I was a comic artist. People who now know that I'm Singlish never expected I was all these other things. You see, because those are, I guess, stages in my life. For other people, they get a job and then they stay at the job for the last 40 years, sorry, not 400, 40 years or so until they retire, and their life is pretty stable. My point is that I didn't ask for it, but I've been thrown into phases of my life, and they're quite often different from each other. And so, for me, I can live with it because that's just life as an adventure. But I think for people who perceive it in part, they may not know the other. So if they make the kind of assumption that they think that I'm speaking off my ass, that's fine for me, because I think that maybe they don't know what I know, what I know about myself. But there are people who just being persistently antagonistic. That's the issue, where they refuse to see the logic, when they refuse to consult the proper sense. Like, for example, there was this guy that I had a discussion with last month. I just gave up after a while, where he insisted that, especially with this day and age, that the word angmoh is a derogatory word. And I have to say, no, it's not. If you look at the historical document, the first use of it was never a derogatory one. And it's not tied to the Hong Kong face, the angmoh kwai. Ours is actually quite distinct from that. And to consistently want to conflate Hong Kong and Singapore it's quite insulting because you're refusing to see that we're two different cultures altogether. The idea is different, the sense is also different. And here, it's really tied to colonialism that came to our part of the world. My point here is that it really depends on whether we are willing to learn. I mean, myself, I'm also learning, sometimes people tell me that, hey, actually, I think this word may have a particular origin or possible origin. I'll just take note of it, and we just learn along the way.
So you're talking about phases of your life and you were a comic artist or academic. What I also noticed that in every phase of your life, you seem to be doing something uncool and making it cool. Like when you wrote your graphic novel at a point, graphic novels in Singapore, that was in 1993. Graphic novels in Singapore wasn't cool.
Yeah.
People didn't, then they're like, and graphic novels wasn't cool, and a Singapore graphic novel even more uncool. So what leads you to do all these uncool things, and also how did your graphic novel life come about?
Yeah, that one is a different story. Made for the Stone, which is the book I did first back in this is not original cover, this is the new cover, the 20th anniversary cover back in 2013. When I did it, I was a university student in the early 90s. It was just accidental, because firstly, comic books, graphic novels then, the word wasn't that popular. People just still call it comic books, right? Quite expensive, of the collected form. So I really either borrow from friends, or in this case, I just wrote my own you can also have the same fun of just writing your own. Hey, I own a graphic novel, a comic book, and that's my book. Anyway, that was, and I just wanted to do something long because I had a long holiday. My friends are all going to find work, between years in the university, and for me, I was like, I just draw one page a day, and so it literally is one page a day, so that the story rounds out with my second year in university starting, and I was trying to finish the last few pages of the story.
So it's almost 100 pages.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was about how long the holidays
holidays
was.
were, right.
Take one page a day. So it was really just very systematic in that sense, that I tried to formulate a story that is enough to kill my time during the holidays. My friends made money, and then from work, I wish I had.
Whoops. but you weren't famous at the time. You were still undergraduate.
Actually, this book was done in my. As I said, it finished as I started second year. It was not published for another year because it was just sitting around in my drawer until someone came and said, "Hey, we're going to publish Lee Chi-Chu's comics." Do you know Lee Chi-Chu, the guy who died Lives Like That and all that from the Straits Times team?
Yes.
Yes, they wanted to compile his comics, his strips, his comic strips, right? And so there was this publisher, is defunct now, at the time, that wanted to do that. And then they said, maybe you want to have 2 or 3 titles, So they asked me whether I have something to show, because I did do comics at the time as well, short ones. And I said, yeah, I have this long thing, And then they look at it and say,
Novel.
Oh, it wasn't like, oh yes, it was.
No, it was like, it has potential, but who wants to read such a long comic? We want something like Lee Chi-Chu's comics, because they are short
and sweet,
and the word they used specifically was evergreen. Evergreen, as in, if you come to this comic 10 years time, you'll still be enjoyable.
Understand.
Whereas yours, who's gonna pick up and read this whole thing again, right? If someone wants a novel, they will read a novel. They won't want to read a comic book, But you see, for me, I don't know. I did enjoy the comic books I borrowed at the time. There were already things like Dark Knight Returns, and all that, and then I was like, I don't know. I kind of enjoyed that medium, and I just want to tell a story about a fantastical world, and I think maybe someone will enjoy it. And so anyway, the good thing about the publisher at the time was that they just said, we'll just give it a try. Anyway, we need another book and not just Lee Chi-Chu's book, right? So if you have 2 books, we will launch it. And they said that, yours is not going to sell, Lee Chi-Chu's one's going to sell like crazy, like cupcakes, and yours is like, just be ready for it. And it was true. At the Singapore Book Festival at the time, there has this thing. I was just sitting at the table and nobody came. And the only person who came was my distributor, and he said, "Hey, how's it going?" Oh wait, there's another person who came. This is another. I mean, my life is made of accidents, right? The other person who came was actually the publisher of my poetry book. At the time, I did not have a poetry book yet, which is How to Fall Out, Who Wants to Buy a Book of Poems, right? He came to me and said, "Hey, that's an interesting book, next time if you want to publish anything, contact me."
Oh, wow.
And he gave me this card. This is Go It King.
Great accident.
Yeah. Yes, that now I remember when I was like so disillusioned with my non-reception of my graphic novel. It literally disappeared. At one point, I saw it in the bargain bin of Popular Bookshop, selling for like $2 or something like this. I was like, it's like I could buy this whole thing. It's cheaper than my author's copy. So when I was disillusioned with this whole comic book thing, I decided to do. At the time, the poetry thing came into my life, and it took up a stronger role. And then I contacted Landmark Books with that card that was sitting in my drawer for 5 years, and that is another
History.
story.
So
The another part of history.
So on the note of all these nice accidents that happened to you, and all these phases you've had, when were you the most uncool?
I think I was uncool.
Always been uncool.
Yeah.
You've always been doing uncool projects. English graphic novel project.
Since you want to talk about cool and uncool, the whole point about cool is that by the time people understand you to be cool, you should be doing something totally uncool.
Exactly.
Really.
What other advice will you give to young aspiring writers who wish to be as prolific a writer as you with that many works published?
You have to make time for it. Make time in your life for all these children. You have kids, right? I mean, you have to make time for them, not just to bring them into life, but also to nurture whatever that will go into its making. And I have lost opportunities. I mean, my academic career, right? I mean, which kind of like ended now 11 years. I just felt like I can't do this job and do creative writing at the same time. I mean, I am not a multitasker. I mean, even though I do all these things that are different, it looks like I'm multitasking, but I'm not. At any one time, I'm just doing one thing. And at the time there was just this pressure of work. My time in the university, it has its own trajectories. I have to do publications, writing for journals that probably nobody will read, or very few people will appreciate. And the people who read are there to criticize your article, to find fault with it, right? And I don't know, that's very different from the whole thing I feel about creative writing, where for creative writing, I know what I'm doing, and when you comment on it, I think I can respond in a way that's internal to the work. The whole thing is different, and then it's also a very time-consuming job, because literally I remember coming to work before the sunrise and leaving after the sunset. So for days I don't see the sun. Maybe I see it when I'm just going to lecture or coming
To and fro.
walking between blocks. But in terms of coming to work and go, I don't remember seeing this. Like always, I come to work when it's dark and I leave when it's dark. And then I don't think I have any public holidays at all, because I'm still working on my publications and all that. And I don't know, I just felt like it's very consuming. And that's one thing. And if you're an artistic person, you're a creative person, there's always this thing that eats you, and then there's this baby crying out, as in like, you're not paying attention to me, especially if you are worse, in my case, because I am academic in literature.
Yeah.
Precisely the thing that I do, which is writing. And then there's two sides of me. One that want to function as a critic, and the other is to function as the writer who does the thing or the people I'm critiquing. And so it was a lot of
conflict in a way.
Yeah, a lot of twists and turns I feel inside, and I just need to make it a clean break so that I can just focus on.
So each time you go into a new thing is basically, okay, I'm going to focus on this right now. Sweep the table clean, the workspace clean.
So
and I'm going to start.
And you've done this for 11 years, creative writing.
No, actually I've been doing this since
uni days.
I've been doing
His
this
holidays.
for the school. I think that's the problem, you know. I mean, if you know, people don't understand this. In your 20s and when you're young, whatever you do, it's never gonna go away.
That's deep. Okay.
No, we think that we have. I'm talking so fast about phrases, right? But in a way, some things don't go away. The things you do when you're really young, they are probably the thing that matters to you most, and you don't realize that. You know, you think you can move on. Like, you know, at the time, maybe young, you are like really love photography and all, and then you go on to become something else, and you think that you left that behind. I don't think so.
Because at that time, maybe you had more time to think about your passion more than just surviving.
Yeah, exactly. And then later on, you kind of have this, you know, feeling about the thing you want to do, and you imagine that when you retire, maybe you'll go back to photography or something like this.
That's true.
And there was a thinking when I was doing my academic work, as in, like, am I going to wait another 20, 30 years before I do the thing I want to do? You know, by the time I may have run out of ideas, by the time I might be dead. You know, you never know, right? These days.
Yeah. So you're saying that you kept yourself motivated all these years because you kept in touch with yourself when you were in your 20s. Yeah, even till today.
I think it's the intensity of my 30s that was the problem. I really was like working like crazy, and then I realized at one point, what am I doing all this for? What am I wasting the best years of my life doing? You know, and I'm not sure I'm seeing clarity anymore. You know, of what I wanted. And so originally the idea is just to take a few years break. It's not supposed to last 11 years. It's not supposed to. I was like, okay, what I'll do is I'll save money when I'm still working, right? And after that, this will pay for my subsequent number
lifestyle,
of years.
yeah.
And once I dip into my savings, that's the end. That means I cannot survive.
Yes.
Right. So whatever I do, I have to earn enough for the year in order to let me do the things I want to do. But once I start to dip into my savings, that means I'm not doing it correctly, right?
So that was your indication.
Yes. So I gave myself 2 or 3 years, lah. And the good thing about this whole thing is also is that lifestyle expectations. For me, I'm a very simple person. I don't spend on a lot of things, and I save whatever I can. So in that sense, it helped lah. It made the dollar stretched. So I after a while I realized, hey, before I know it was 11 years. It's like I could actually survive like that.
Based on your experience now, then having been doing this for so many years, what is Singapore literature today like? I mean, how it's evolved.
I think we moved beyond all these concerns with national identity. There was a time when that was a kind of dominant thing that writers keep talking about. At least we've gone beyond that kind of reflection, you know, to deal with other aspects of life. You know, there's more to writing and living than thinking about communal identities, right? And people have done it in many ways. People either write as a way to push for justice, or people write because they want to explore aesthetics, you know, to understand beauty, to see, you know, possibilities in words, you know, and explore fantasy worlds and all. Now the trend is to write to get international attention, you know, get international awards, get international recognition. I think it's still the same thing. In a sense, this sort of push both types of pushes are still the same, right? I mean, in the sense that they are really about general social trends and how the writer should fit into that trend. Yeah. How do I previously write for national identity? Now is how should I write to get international recognition? It's important for the writer to understand, or the artist to understand himself or herself and the place in the world, in his or her world, you know.
What would you say to yourself now if you could talk to yourself when you're the most uncool?
When I was most uncool, I don't know, I'm still uncool. Okay, I've always been uncool, I think. But if you're asking me what would I say to my younger self, the pre-published person, I would just say trust yourself, trust your instinct, and go with what you think is right for yourself.
Where can our listeners follow you on social media?
Guizila for Instagram. Facebook, I'm on with my name like Guili Sui, but I'm not going to add you as friends. Sorry. I've learned this. Yeah. Sorry. I've learned my lesson. Previously, I add indiscriminately, and then people come on to my page and basically politicize it lah.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe to The Uncool or rate us 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Just search for Freelance Creative Exchange and you can find more episodes of The Uncool or others in our series. And then you click follow.
Also, share with us and celebrate the uncool moments by going to any social media platforms and using the hashtag FCEUncool.
We want to hear from you, and remember, it's cool to be uncool.